everyone, and welcome to Beginnings, the show that asks, where do creative people come from? My name is Andy. I'm the host of the show and a writer and performer based in Los Angeles, California. How is everyone feeling this week? I almost said, how is everyone feeling this bleak? But I know the answer. How is everyone feeling this bleak? By reality. They are, every day I wake up and I read about some new rule being dismantled or some. I have been having stomach issues, and I had a telehealth visit with the doctor, and she's like, I think you have acid reflux. And you know, my diet hasn't really changed. I am older, but it was a little sudden. And I'm looking online, seeing some of the reasons why you might have it, and one of them is stress. And I'm like, right. Every day I wake up and suddenly the news is like, by the way, the cops can steal your organs now and sell them on the black market, and it's totally legal. Or ancient diseases that died out in the 9th century are back. Bone worms. We thought bone worms died out in the 800s, but now, yeah, you can get worms, and they eat all your marrow, and they control you from the inside. And they're back. When I was learning about World War II, when I was learning about the Holocaust or the descent into fascism in Europe, no one's talking about, they're all talking about the destruction and all the evil and all that kind of stuff. No one's talking about the stomach issues, especially since this is happening to a population of Jews who are already predestined to have stomach problems. Watching your country descend into authoritarianism gives you a sour stomach. Also, I get a lot of, this is totally separate, I get a lot of weird spam. One thing, I think I got another one a couple episodes ago that I talked about, but I sometimes get these marketing emails that tell me that Beginnings comes up for certain popular search terms. So for Kevin Allison, who was a guest a while ago, apparently Beginnings is the number 53 ranked result. Young Beauty Queen is number 59. I don't know when I've ever talked about a young beauty queen on the show. And the Shags is number 92. So if you search the Shags, we're the number 92 result. And yes, I bring up the Shags somewhat often, since it was insane. Another insane marketing email I got. Villains on Trial, the real crimes of Disney's darkest characters. How long would Disney villains really spend behind bars? Okay, enough of that. I want to get to today's episode because this was a delight. Today I am talking to Merrill Garbus and Nate Brenner of Tune Yards, and if you don't know who they are, I'm going to read you their bio right now. Started by musician Merrill Garbus in the mid-aughts, Tune Yards' first official release, Bird Brains, came out in 2009 on 4AD. Almost immediately, the band began to garner acclaim from Pitchfork, The Village Voice, and many other publications. After the release of Bird Brains, Merrill moved to Oakland, where Nate Brenner lived, and since then the two have recorded 5 more albums, a number of singles, as well as the score to the Boots Riley film Sorry to Bother You. Their latest, Better Dreaming, by the way, that's just a small sampling of their output, there's much more, but I try to keep these bios somewhat brief. Their latest, Better Dreaming, just came out a few weeks ago on 4AD, and folks, it's wonderful. This was another one of those ones where I wasn't sure exactly what to expect. I only knew Merrill and Nate from their music. I don't think I ever read an interview with them or knew much about them. What I love about the show is how pleasantly surprised I am when I talk to someone whose art I like and who are both cool people to talk to. Folks, we get into it. This intro is already going way longer than I ever like intros to go, so I will just say I hope you enjoy this episode. And very quickly, coming up on the show, David Bazan of Pedro the Lion, Michael DeForge, Kelly Sue DeConnick, great comics people, Daniel Littleton of Ida. We talk about his punk days outside of DC in the 80s. Really interesting stuff, so stay tuned for those. But for now, let's talk to Merrill and Nate. So, Nate, you were just like, Merrill, he's a neurotic Jew from the East Coast.
Right up your alley. He
It'll
knows
feel
that he
right at
can't
home.
say neurotic. I'm the only one around here. I'm the neurotic Jew that can say neurotic Jew around here.
So okay, so well, let me ask this question. Wait, Nate, let me say this.
Yeah,
How old
yeah.
are you? Do you mind if I ask?
I'm about to be 42.
Okay, so we're all the same age roughly. And I just went to the doctor. I went to the dermatologist yesterday for like a yearly. My grandmother died of melanoma, so I go for like a
Hmm.
yearly check.
That's good. That's good.
Thank you. And I didn't sleep at all Sunday night to Monday because I was convinced. And this is the first time this has ever
Mm,
happened in my life, but I was convinced she was going to find something. It was going to be inoperable. It was,
wow.
she found
Okay.
nothing. There was
Yeah.
absolutely nothing. But
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I was like, this is melanoma right here. And it
Yeah.
was like, even though my last appointment was November, it'll have bloomed into something uncontrollable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is your question the difference between someone who grows up in Indiana at a Unitarian church versus Jewish on the East Coast? Is that going to be your
Well,
question?
I'm asking if that is a familiar feeling to you, if that is something that you have experienced. Even I would say maybe I was a tad too, and I think I'm channeling as a parenthetical. I'm probably channeling the dread I feel about
Yeah.
about America at the moment.
I was gonna say, right, like that. Whenever I hear that, I'm like, right, but it's not really about whether you have skin cancer enough, right? It's like that, like all of the anxieties are are projected onto this one thing that you have a weird amount of control over. Like compared to America, you have weird amounts of control over whether or not you have melanoma, especially psychologically. You have control over that worry. I would say two things. One is that my dad's Jewish from the Bronx. My mom is Presbyterian from the mountains of Kentucky, and she is so I don't go there because I have this like nothing's wrong, just keep going, like her from her side of the family, she's like they don't see like my grandmother probably never took an aspirin in her life, like that level of didn't ever see doctors ever. So there's a degree of like what I see in my Jewish family of the over worrying that like gets kind of canceled out, but not I'm not going to say canceled out because I certainly have it in there. Um, but yeah, I think I know better at this point, right? Like you probably somewhere in you were like, this is not actually like this is not about this.
Mm, eh, eh,
I think
it,
it was about
yeah,
this.
there was I'm saying now on the other side of
Mhm.
it that I'm like I was probably channeling my dread that I feel in America turning into Nazi Germany 1938. Is that where we're about 1938 roughly? We're like pre Polish invasion.
Time,
We haven't
time
had
will tell.
yeah
Time will tell where we
we
are.
we haven't had a crystal knocked yet. So okay,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
fingers
Yeah,
crossed.
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
But
yeah. Yep, totally. Yeah.
wait,
No, yeah.
yeah, Nate, Unitarian from Indiana. So what does
Right.
that mean in
I,
terms of
I'm,
like anxiety,
yeah,
neuroticism?
it's luckily I don't
That
have to
link.
catch myself.
None.
And the one thing, like, I'm lucky in that a lot of times people have this like inner voice that's like, you're whatever, you're gonna have cancer, you're a failure, whatever. And a lot of times my inner voice is just like whatever song we're working on. So I'm kind of like, oh, great. Let's just like keep that in there. I don't have to hear my own words talking to myself. Just like because we were rehearsing all the time, we're making music. Then I can just like keep it going. Just, let's just like keep rehearsing, keep playing the bass while I'm trying to sleep. No, no words. Words are bad.
Wait, is that a conscious thing that you are consciously pushing out the
No,
intrusive thoughts, or it's just naturally the song? Because I think I'm like that too, where I will have something either like a script I'm working on or something or a song or something going through my head on repeat or something like that. But then it's fighting the intrusive thoughts. They're like battling each other in a kind of a cage match in my brain.
yeah. Well, I think like probably because you're a writer, you have more words. Like I don't have any words. I can hardly speak English. It's just which is great, because then if you don't have words, you don't have negative words. You don't have negative thoughts. You just have long imaginary frequencies of round, warm bass tones.
And meanwhile, I listen to I listen to podcasts like these days all night long. Like I listen right now to basketball podcasts all night long. So I'm with you.
That is, yeah. So I will have the TV on all night, and my wife will have her phone, like have, a streaming channel on her phone on all night to drive out. Because if we wake up and we're up for more than a second, and one of those thoughts can creep in, like in a movie where like a door slams shut, like in an Indiana Jones type thing. It's like slams shut from the top, but then like a creature like sticks its claw under,
and that's all you need.
It's all in a second. So if like, I've been rewatching Battlestar Galactica. So if that can catch my brain, then I can maybe get back to sleep quickly.
Yeah. So do you get this question are you in LA?
Yeah.
So from other California people, do you get the question, have you tried meditation? Have you tried meditation?
I've heard of it. I tried it once. Once I encountered the white hot nothingness at the center of meditation, it was so frightening that I never went back.
That's like me with weed.
Wait, in what way?
It's just not like, as soon as I realize that I'm relaxed and not in control of things, then I hate it. And I'm like, I'm not in control of things. I'm not in control of things. And then I'm literally talking myself down about the experience of not being in control of things. It sucks.
All right. Well, wait. Okay. I like this because I also am a control freak that goes back all the way to my childhood. I'm curious, is that a thing that also it has wound its way through your life?
Oh, I thought you were going to say, is that a Jewish thing? And I'm like, I don't know. Probably. I don't. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And has to do with, like, for me, it has to do with a lot with addiction, actually, which I don't talk about a lot, but is definitely part of my world. Like, I'm very familiar with 12 steps, and it's a big part of my daily life. And I think that discipline is around, like, every morning I wake up and I think that my job is to control everything I possibly can, and definitely control the world, which is absurd, but that somehow is still, I'm under the illusion that I have control over things. And so every day for me now is a practice of how to remind myself not only that I'm not in control, but actually that it's a beneficial thing to not be in control. And that my job really during the day is to acknowledge my position as like a humble human being, like one of billions of human beings that has no control. And somehow find peace, in that instead of fight it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I want to go back to this, but Nate, I want to ask you the same question to you. Are you a control freak like we are, or are you, because you seem very chill, and obviously we've known each other for about 10 minutes, so I don't know how much of that is representative of you as a person, period.
I'm definitely not a control freak, and sometimes I wonder, just because Meryl's like the older sibling and I'm a younger sibling, and just if that, I mean, there's obviously a lot of different factors, but if just being the older sibling, you feel like you have to be in charge of the younger one, but do you have any siblings?
I have a younger sister.
So you're both the older sibling, so that's interesting. In charge. There's a lot of responsibility there, I think, versus the younger siblings. It's just ignorance is bliss. Just tell us where to go. Give me that juice box. And
I will say, I think if you were a control freak, we probably would not be in a band together. Like there's enough of, like whatever, there's enough, I don't want to say hardship, because it doesn't feel like hardship, enough of a challenge in collaboration between any two human beings that I think I think my exercise has been relinquishing control And probably yours somewhat, maybe, would you say, has been like, whatever, taking up not control, but
Yeah,
space
totally.
and asserting your own creativity in it too.
Yeah, definitely.
And so it's, but in other words, we get to work out that balance instead of we're both control freaks. Yeah.
We're very opposite in a lot of ways, even astrologically.
Oh yes.
I'm a Taurus sun. Meryl's a Taurus moon. Meryl's a Pisces sun, and I'm a Pisces moon. So we have even that
Another
going.
Californian question. Are you into astrology?
No, I'm nodding. I have no idea what it means. I am open to you guys interpreting it however it means. I'm not here to squash anyone's fun, but I have no clue.
Great. You don't need to. Just not.
But okay, so Meryl, and tell me what you don't want to talk about. But are we talking about when you said addiction stuff? Are we talking about on the one side Al-Anon, or are we talking about the other side, the big book, that kind of, where are we on this?
Oh, yeah, I deal with my own, I mean both, but less both. Both, but I have my own thing that I don't, because of the whole anonymous thing, I don't talk about like which program I'm in, but yeah, big book and the own, and literature for my own program too. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I have the Al-Anon thing too. Not in and not, and it's been really helpful, I think, who doesn't have an addict in their life, right? In my experience.
Yeah. But I guess the thing I was curious about was with control issues and stuff. Were you trying to control things when you were a kid? Were you trying to curate a vibe, I guess is what people say these days? Were you the person that organized neighborhood kids into doing something, or is that just something that developed later in life?
No, I was not. I was very, very, very shy. I'm trying to think of maybe I'm like an atypical control freak. I'm the kind of control freak that's like, I'm going to make everything okay for everybody. So I'm a codependent control freak.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Al-Anon. Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. But yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to walk through both of your timelines. Nate, you're a cipher. You have somehow avoided having your information online, which I guess is good in 2025.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know much.
Oh, let's expose
Meryl.
Nate.
I was able to okay, so Meryl, right?
Mm-hmm.
Born in Ridgewood, right?
Ridgewood, New Jersey. Yeah.
New Jersey, near Dumont. I know Dumont.
I don't know Dumont because I moved when I was
oh, so you didn't even
2.5.
Okay, so where do you like form as a person?
New Canaan, Connecticut.
Okay, what's in there?
What's in there is very, very rich, very, very old rich people, by which I've been money for generations, blue bloods, as we used to call them. And my parents moved there for the public schools, which is, I don't know whether to put that in quotes. They really did move for the public schools, but I think that was because of the reputation of Stamford, Connecticut, and Norwalk, Connecticut, the neighbors of New Canaan, which were not as white as New Canaan. So were the public schools better, or were they more white, or did they have more money because the town was more wealthy? I actually don't know, but I think we can make some assumptions there. But that meant that I grew up, with two freaks as parents, really, when it came, everyone's mom had an eating disorder or was an alcoholic, and everyone went to like the country club on the weekends, and like my parents played for English country dances and contra dances and played old-timey music. And my dad was Jewish, like that we were Jewish enough to kind of not fit in. There was, I think, I remember one other Jewish girl in our town. So, and my mom's from Kentucky, as I said. So it was formative in that I knew we didn't belong in all the ways. And I wish I could say, when I first started this being in the public eye, I had just lived in Vermont for 4 years, and I was semi illegally living in Canada, and so I would be like, I'm from Vermont, and there was something about that that felt like, yeah, I'm like, because I was a crunchy hippie, astrology, and I wanted to buy land and farm and build cob houses.
Crystals.
Yeah, crystals, exactly. I was a crystal wearing, granola eating, patchouli smelling hippie. So like the mythology about myself felt way more like, yeah, I'm from Vermont. And the truth is, as I get older, I'm like, no, the formative experience was feeling like an outsider in a very wealthy white town.
Yeah. No, I definitely get the Jew in a very Christian area part of that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Nate, Indiana. Where in Indiana?
Bloomington, Indiana, where Indiana University is.
Right.
So it was a lot different than New Canaan, I think, just having the university there. It was more diverse and more, even though not, at all diverse compared to Oakland or LA or, but for Indiana, it was definitely diverse. So everyone in Bloomington, like my parents and their friends always referred to Bloomington as like the oasis in Indiana where you can have culture, like good music, good food. And because the college, brought everyone there. So in my dad was a piano player growing up, and Meryl's mom was a piano player. So again, opposites in that way.
Yeah. Wait, piano player. When you say, I read, Meryl, that your mom was a piano teacher. Was she on? And you said your parents played on the weekends, right? Like in a combo, in a musical combo,
in a musical combo. At time they had a band together before I was born. That was an old timey string band. My mom played the dulcimer.
Oh wow.
The mountain dulcimer, 3-string dulcimer, and my dad played the fiddle. But on the weekends, yeah, my mom got into the English country dance scene in New Haven, Connecticut. Did you know there was such a scene?
No, sorry. Hold on. What do you mean? Say that again. The new country dance. Wait, what?
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to divert from your life story. So, my mom was more classically trained. So my dad came to folk music in the I guess mid '60s in Washington Square Park, and his dad would take him to watch all the folkies play. My mom came from Kentucky, but she went to Manhattan School of Music to study classical piano in the '60s. So then as time went on, my dad was just more into old timey, and my mom was into her classical performance and then teaching students. But then she got a job at a school in New Haven, Connecticut, where they had an English country dance band and English country dances. Now, if you don't know what English country dancing is, it is, how do I describe it? It's folk dances from like Renaissance England. That's what I can say.
Like where they do the thing with they touch hands and they make a.
That's Morris dancing. You're so close, but like Morris dancing is with handkerchiefs and jumping up, and then medieval dancing or Renaissance dancing. Sometimes it's been in movies, like maybe it was in Pride and Prejudice. Like there are movies that exploit the notion of la la la. Fancy dresses and balls, and this is more like folk dancing, like what the folk would have done in England during that time.
Okay. I can kind of picture it in my head.
This is so niche. This is niche. Now, but it's good that I will say it had a huge influence on me musically, because as a kid, every summer my mom would teach at this camp, and my sister and I would go along and we would dance the dances and hear all the music. And I think that was pairing movement with music. That was like probably the first time I really danced, and was aware of rhythm and tempo and grace and etc. And okay, and back to you, Nate.
Yeah. Nate.
Yes.
What kind of piano? Like for the orchestra? For
good joke. No, well, my dad actually was studying classical music at Indiana University, but then he just got so into jazz. Like I think a lot of the his one of his main experiences was around, it was probably like 1979. He went to the New Orleans Jazz Festival and heard Professor Longhair, who's this, I don't know if you have heard of him.
Sorry, that's a real person and not
you don't know Professor Longhair.
It sounds like what someone would call like a hippie derogatively, like, oh, Professor Longhair over there.
Yeah. So Professor Longhair is this certain style of like boogie woogie, like jazz piano playing, where it's kind of like he can play the left hand. He's like playing the bass line with his left hand, playing the right hand like chords, and then he'll play with like a conga drum player, and it's like super like funky. It's he actually, I think he opened for the Rolling Stones one day. Actually.
Yeah, if you know, if you got into New Orleans music at all, you would be like Professor Longhair would be right up there with the Godfathers.
Yeah, and so he was, when I was growing up, my dad was just like obsessed with him and was learning all his music and other like kind of like stride and boogie woogie piano players. And so he would be playing constantly, just practicing the piano, and he would have me and my brother play drums with him, along with him. So we were just like always making music, and my dad was always booking gigs too. So we would just go, every weekend we'd have a gig. And ever since I was really young, we're both gigging lifers right here.
Yeah. What kind of gig are you talking about? Like how many? Like at a
good question.
Good question.
Anything you can possibly imagine, like the farmer's market, or even a wedding, or a performance like Bloomington would have like a summer concert series, or we'd drive outside of the city to as far as Louisville or Chicago.
Bars, restaurants,
everything, restaurants, bars, convention centers, just everything and anything. We were just playing. So it was just kind of like when I was in high school, almost every weekend we were playing gigs. And then
with your dad every weekend?
Yeah.
Wow.
And maybe not. Hey, maybe I'm exaggerating a little, but who's going to fact check me now? But for me, it was just like a way where he'd pay us money, so I would make money, and so then I could buy a Nintendo 64. That's all. What I really wanted was to play video games all the time.
Sure, GoldenEye, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Wait, did he make a living doing this, or this was just a fun thing on the side?
Both. I mean, yeah. Well, he had a full-time job, and he was playing constantly, so it was kind of like he had two jobs. And we were just, in general, when I think back to my childhood, it was just, we were busy all the time, and just going, like, we were playing gigs all the time, or going to parties, like having people over. Like, both my parents were constantly doing stuff. So, and we would do, aside from music, like when I was younger, we'd do soccer, and football, or not football, anything but football. So it's soccer, basketball, baseball, do all the summer camps, music lessons. I was taking drum lessons and bass lessons.
I'm tired just hearing you talk about it.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you have like a moment to yourself, or is it always just like on the go?
Always on the go. But now I have moments to myself all the time. My favorite thing to do now is lay down on the floor. Okay. That's it. No podcasts, no music, no book, nothing. Just lay down on the floor.
And no intrusive thoughts. You're just
nothing.
Able to
just lay. So if you're lucky, Coco will climb on my lap and take a nap.
Okay. So a childhood where you're constantly on the go, you're playing music already. You are in sports. It makes me think, and the same thing with you, Meryl, with like learning dance and music at the same time. Are you both, when you're growing up, conscious of having a body? Does this make sense as a question, first of all? because I was someone who was very much, I did not like the fact that I still don't. Like, again, like going back to like the idea that like I go to the doctor, I'm just like, well, it's going to be wrong this time. What's the like, oh, well, spin the Price is Right wheel and it's going to come up cancer, diabetes. Like, what is it going to be? But that's because I think I was like, I had this very Cartesian notion in my head when I was younger that it's just like, well, your mind is something separate. But did you grow up feeling embodied?
That's a great question, I think. And one I've never been asked before. I would answer. Do you want to answer?
No, you go first.
I would say, I remember when I was young, like I think probably before I moved to said blue-blooded town, I remember loving having a body in terms of like, I think I took a modern dance class when I was like 3 or 4, and I loved just leaping and jumping and moving my body to music. And I totally still do and always did growing up. But I do think that there was a moment where I felt like my body was not okay. That was definitely, comparing my own body to other girls' bodies. And I think at that moment, I started to do that thing where I was like, well, I'll just be okay. I'll just be really okay up in my brain and get straight A's and just be super smart and super successful and do everything right. And then no one will pay attention to the fact that I have a body. So yeah, for me, that's been like a relearning thing of how to have a body.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah. I think for me too, similar when I was younger, I think like we were dancing all the time at our house. I was playing sports. I think I was like very aware I had a body, but I was also the kind of kid that was really big for his age. And then around probably like 7th grade or so, I stopped growing. So when I was in 6th grade, I was like on the all-star baseball team, just like, living the dream, just like big league, here I come. And then by the time I was like in 8th grade or high school, it was like all these kids were 6 foot tall and I was still whatever, like 5'6", 5'7" or so. Like basically it was like a big adjustment for me to where I was like, oh, I'm not like, I think I still thought of myself as like pretty big. And then up until it took a while, like until probably I was in college or so, to just be like, oh, I'm actually like pretty small.
Okay. This might be weird, but I'm going to get into something through this. Nate,
Do it.
Yeah.
Do you think the class you grew up in, economic class, was like the median class for Bloomington?
Not at the beginning, but in the middle, maybe, because it's kind of a longer story. But so when my parents had my brother, they were still in college, and so they my mom like basically was an art major, so she dropped out of school and to like raise me and my brother. And so when we were in our early childhood, they were like pretty low, very like low income. And then by the time I was probably in 8th grade or no, 8 years old, whatever that is, maybe who knows what grades are anymore. But all to say, there was like a big shift because like my mom ended up probably when I was like, between the ages of 4 to 8 or so, she got her master's and then got a job as a social worker. Mm. And so it was all of a sudden, I just remember one Christmas where we had just like a ton of presents for the first time. Mm-hmm. And so me and my brother were like, maybe Santa Claus is real because our parents can't afford all this, So it was kind of like that. The early childhood, we were very low income. And then by around whatever, 6th, 7th grade, then they were both, we had like 2 incomes. So they were just like making a bunch of money, but we stayed in the same house the whole time.
Uh-huh. Okay. So this is why I asked this, because I am curious. I wonder if feeling embodied, feeling okay with one's body and feeling that it is something enjoyable to inhabit, I wonder if there's a function of class consciousness in this. And
wow. Wait.
So follow me on this. We grew up middle class, and whenever I was around like wealthy family friends, I always felt too aware of everything because I was like, am I doing things right? Are these people judging me?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's not just class consciousness. Maybe it's just a function of otherness in any way. And I'm wondering if Meryl, if there was any kind of element of that in like being self-aware or becoming self-aware, becoming too aware.
That's a good question. And I don't know if it has to do, I mean, because it could be so many things though, right? Like it could be, I'm also wondering, like we are all white. I assume you identify as white. Like we're all white in this Zoom room. And I wonder how that intersects with being not white in a white society, in a white town, in a white school. I don't know. I think there's and then being a woman in a patriarchal world, like there's so many layers of it that I don't know if I could. I think and then there's family stuff too. Like I think there was stuff in my family where I was like, that's not actually, we did not talk about bodies very much in our household.
Yep.
So there's that thing too, So I think for me it was a big old stew of shame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you both? Could you talk to your parents about stuff, or were they just authority figures?
I did not talk to my parents about stuff. Short answer. And that was, for maybe for different reasons for both of them. But yeah, I did not, that wasn't part of, it was a bare minimum, I would say. How's school today? Good.
Yeah, sure. Yes, exactly. But there was no deeper kind of like, what about even emotions? Could you tell them about like what you were feeling? Or they were just not the people to go to for that? I
mean, I think it comes up, right? Like it obviously there's like, especially hormonal teenagers, like it comes up. That's like, why are you crying hysterically, Meryl? Or I remember one time I came home from college and I probably hadn't slept for like a month and I couldn't stop crying. And I was studying I was in a production of Waiting for Godot. And like, there's a combination of just like, I can't go on, we must go on, we can't go on, we must go on. Like just, it was so deeply disturbing and depressing. And I just sobbed in front of Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton movies for like a week. And I remember my mom going, go to sleep, Meryl. Like that was like, that was her, again, Kentucky mountains. Like she wasn't going to hold my hand and be like, can you let me know about your existential questions about why I brought you into this world and how I can help you see some, she was just like, go to bed. You're ridiculous. Yeah. And so of course, when you're in that family unit, at least my experience is, it was the four of us. It was, my parents and me and my sister, and they're inevitably were up in each other's stuff. But I would say it felt like probably the place to bring things was my friends for the most part. Yeah.
Nate, what about you?
I could definitely talk to my parents and my mom. I think this was all on my end, but I feel like I definitely was very comfortable talking with my mom but I know she was like, studying like early childhood development. It's like, she was like ended up being a elementary school social worker. So it was kind of like a lot of it was on her end that she was really good at it. So I think with my dad, he was more, like I can definitely talk to him now, but I think he just, we were just too busy playing music to talk.
Right. Okay. Right. Right. The nonstop childhood, like everything's moving very quickly.
Exactly.
Do you feel like you had a childhood? Like you're doing all this stuff all the time?
Yeah. I mean, I think so. I think like now, that's a good question. No, I do. I mean,
I will say this podcast is way deeper than I thought it was going to be. This is amazing. We're finding stuff out about ourselves and each other
Yeah. I mean, and the other thing for me was like, I also, when I was in high school and middle school, like I also figured out that if I'd practice the bass or drums, then I could get out of doing anything I didn't want to do too. So it was also like self-induced. So like every night, instead of doing the dishes, I could go practice. So that was like my hack, my get out of, doing anything. So
Can I go back a second?
Yeah.
Because I realized that just to clarify that there were some key moments where I did need to go to my parents, and they totally came through. For instance, being a nanny for a kid, and I was working like for various reasons. I ended up working like 15-hour days with this 2-year-old, and I was having a mental breakdown, and I called my dad, and I was like really hysterically crying, and he was like, you need to get out of there. So there were certain times, and I'm sure there's those moments with my mom too. So I'm just, to be fair, what a teenager wants to confide in to, their parents about is not necessarily what the parents, I think they could have handled more than I was willing to give. Just coming up with that. Also, the question the question of, do you feel like you had a childhood?
Yeah, definitely.
Like, I feel like you had a child. When you talk about your childhood, It sounds really fun.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say, like, we also, because my parents were so busy and whatnot, but they were also, it was a lot of socializing too. So they, like, my mom would like set me up with like play dates, and even one of my best friends who I met when I was like 6 years old or so we're still best friends now. So, and it's all like, it was a blind date that our moms set us up on. But, so it wasn't all work and music. There was a lot of like going to the park and, playing and stuff too. So I think it's just like a lot of it's my mom, and like, it's the way she still is now. She's just always doing stuff. Like always having plans, like going to festivals, like
fun stuff.
Yeah, always having fun.
Yeah, interesting. We had fun. I'm not saying my family we had lots of fun, but it was also a lot. I grew up with this kind of this mentality of just like, life is hard, and that's just it. And there's sometimes there's nice stuff and sometimes there's fun stuff, but in general, it's just difficult. And I'm just like, and I think that was the Jewish, but the kind of like parents raised, born like right after the Holocaust type kind of stuff, just like
totally
crowding out almost every other feeling.
Yeah, I would say I had that too from my dad's side, but I mean, in that, like, there was a lot of the, I mean, have you done this like unpacking of your own personal myths? Because it sounds like you're self-aware enough to be like, this is what I grew up in. And I think sometimes for me, I catch myself in going in having the same attitude. I mean, we're in a fucking rock band, you know what I mean? Like, we have a dream fun job. And I can get so every day I have to be like, hey, it's fun. Like, if you want to be like bleak about life, like, go get a corporate job, because then you wouldn't worry so much about paying your mortgage, because I can get into that the pattern. It's like as if it's like stamped in my brain that the way one should feel about labor is that it sucks, and that like I'm always doing shit that I don't want to be doing, instead of like, my job is really cool. Mm-hmm. Do you have that where like, I mean, your sounds like your life is filled, like you've made your life full of creativity and right. Do you feel stressed out? Do you feel stressed out about it?
Well, not now, but I think why I brought this all up is because it was something I had to dig out from underneath that feeling, right? And it took me a while. And I asked this a lot on the show to my guests, because I'm curious what signals they got when they were younger and what made them able to follow a creative path if the signals were, no, you're not supposed to do that. That's like, that's not for us, or that's not a thing that people do. But it seems also like you both had examples in your life of them doing it either professionally or close to professionally. Right?
Totally.
So I'm curious about how that all kind of mixed in your brain to create the path you eventually took.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, we've talked about this a lot too, because in my case, my mom studied piano performance, but then realized that she didn't like that part of it. That was not what, she loved playing piano, but she didn't want to do that. She didn't want to try to do that as her profession. And so she was a teacher for my whole life, and loved teaching, and was very, very good at teaching, especially beginners. And I think that and my dad, the story that my dad, I think, tells himself is that he studied first painting and then architecture and then worked as an architect. But then when I was born, he wasn't making a living that way. And he very, very soon after my sister was born, got a job through a friend at IBM. And all of a sudden he became he was in the corporate world, and kind of like Nate's saying, there was a moment where I was like, oh, now we're not poor anymore. Like it was a Christmas. It was a Christmas where like we could afford stuff. And so I think there's the story that I always was kind of overheard my dad saying was, I don't have any time for what I really want to do because I'm so busy with my job and the house and cleaning and blah, blah, blah. There was a lot of like, what I really want to be doing is painting, or what I really want to be doing is, yada, yada, yada. And so I think I got these there were two different stories, and it's like funny coming from very creative parents, but the story was still like as my grandpa used to say, from this you can make a living. I'd be like, Grandpa, I started a band with a ukulele. From this you can make a living.
That's your dad's father?
Yes.
Yeah, that sounds...
Sounds like a Jew from the Bronx. Yes.
From this you can make a living, maybe?
Yeah.
Sounds like all my relatives.
Yeah.
From the Bronx. From River... no, what is it?
Van Cortlandt Park was where they lived. The Amalgamated, which is those, it was essentially a Jewish cooperative set of apartment buildings.
Tremont Avenue. That's where they were all like they like. I think someone worked in a shoe store or something like that. I just remember as a child visiting a Buster Brown shoe store.
Buster Brown,
where someone was working when I was when we were visiting them in the Bronx.
Oh wow. Wow. Buster Brown. I haven't heard that kind of shoe in a long couple decades.
So, Meryl, for you then, was it pretty apparent from an early age that you didn't want to, that maybe this is a bad way to characterize it, but you can tell me, the whiff of regret that you could smell off of your dad, that it kind of like made you think, well, maybe I shouldn't just have a corporate job, or maybe I shouldn't just have a job. I should actually follow something that means something to me. Totally.
Yeah. And for me, that was the teenage black and white myth, like I'm never going to have a job where I complain about it all the time. And meanwhile, I think my mom was my mom was being a musician, and in a very quiet, but like she seemed very satisfied with what she was doing. So I think I did have that model of like, this is, being in the arts, but not necessarily a performer is a possibility. But I was into theater in high school, and it was a big part of me feeling like I blossomed out of my shy self. And I was like, this is what I want to do. And I was obsessed with Ethan Hawke and Ethan Hawke's theater company in the 90s in New York City. And, what's his face from Dead Poets Society. There are all these people that were like, that was what I was going to do, was theater. And then I studied theater and ended up working at a puppet theater. And then was like, this actually is not, there's something missing here. And that's when I turned to music again.
Okay. I want to get to that, but I want, Nate, you tell me, what was it early on where you were like, I can do this, or I want to do this? Or did you not have one of those? Some guests don't. They just kind of like, yeah, I stumbled into this and it was fun.
I think for me, it was around, 7th or 8th grade, I was like, okay, I'm not going to be a baseball player. So I'll go for my backup bass guitar. And then by the time I was in like a junior or senior in high school, I feel like then it was more like, if I wanted to have kids and like have a family someday, then I should become a teacher, or, so that was kind of the limit, like, which, like, it's one thing to just be a musician versus like, oh, if I actually want to, like, support a family or something, then it's impossible. So that's what I thought, and which is a good good thing to think, I think, because it's kind of crazy. But so I decided I wanted to become like a music professor. My dream was to teach upright bass, just like drink coffee, and I just like sit in. Yeah, hear me out. You have your own studio. Like, these college kids come in, you tell them like, okay, like, keep up the good work, keep practicing. You're just like sitting drinking coffee. That was my dream job. And so it wasn't until after I graduated college that I was like maybe I should just like take a year off before going to get a master's, to end up eventually teaching. And then during that year that I took off, I was planning on going to Queens College, but I moved out to Oakland.
Uh-huh.
And with the first night I was in town, I went to a jam session and met the bass player who was touring with Tom Waits, Seth Ford Young. And he was like, hey, like, give me your number. And he basically like gave me all these gigs that he didn't want to do because he was on tour or he was double booked. So within like, 3-4 months or so of moving out here, I was gigging 7 nights a week. And I was like, okay, maybe I don't have to go back to grad school now. I can just like do music professionally. But I thought that I still wouldn't be able to have a family or kids pretty much up until Meryl got pregnant. Like, fast forward like 20 years or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, or 18 years.
Can I insert something here?
Please.
Just that. So for me, I feel like my story is I was like, puppeteering isn't for me. Definitely not going to make a living this way. I got to pivot to ukulele rock and roll. And I did that. But I still just gave myself till I was like, if I can't make this a viable living, by the time I'm 30, then I'm going to quit and figure out something else. Same, like, from this, you can make a living. So it's interesting thinking that we both kind of had that in our heads, and that maybe that's why we worry about money all the time. I mean, in that,
yeah, definitely.
Probably there's still a big part of us that, because we kind of, I mean, since you got all those gigs from Seth Ford Young, you kind of just kept rolling along.
Yeah.
Then we started playing together. Then Tune Yards became something that was making enough money to pay us to survive. And then we wrote songs and the royalties started coming in, and we were like, oh, this is kind of working. And I feel like it's kind of interesting that we never actually needed to change our deep mythology about what a person with a house and a kid can do for a living. We just kind of ended up here.
Right. But there were, along the way, I remember Dave, who ran our old rehearsal studio, like, he said something to me like, Nathan, like, you, sorry, I might not even try to do his impersonation.
Try it. It's too good.
Like, you're a lucky guy, Nathan. Like, you're playing the bass and you're like actually making money. Like, even it basically, I'm not going to do his impression. Sorry. Let me start.
Did he say that? It sounded like he was saying it angrily.
That's how he talks.
You're lucky.
You think you're a pretty lucky guy, Nathan. But basically he was like, hey, you're making money, like, playing music. Like, this could end like in a week, like it. But like, he basically was just like, enjoy this. Like, it could be over tomorrow. It could be over in a week. It could be a month. It could be a year. but you're doing it right now. So don't even worry about when it's going to end. And I think that was really helpful for me because like before that, I was always thinking about like, okay, this is great, but it's not going to last. Like it's going to, so like in the back of my mind, I was always
And
like,
I have
like,
that too.
yeah, like the plan B, okay, it's not too late to go back to Queens College and get a, degree and teach music or whatever. But for him to just be like, hey, don't think about that. And I think that was really good advice because I feel like we're always just like thinking about the future too much. And so it's like if it ends, like if Tune Yards like stops being a band or we stop making money, whatever, then we can figure something else out and get another job. But while we have this as our job, we should enjoy the hell out of it.
Yeah, but you're also a guy who can just lie on the ground and kind of like space out. So
I was going to say, how about the Jews here? The Jews here are saying we must always think 8 steps ahead because the shit's going to fucking get us. And and are you having this in this day and age where I'm like, that stuff is coming way like, the waves of, oh my God, now, we got to have a go bag, a fire disaster plan, an earthquake disaster plan, a tsunami disaster plan. Like there's some deep, heavy shit that's like actual reality that I'm really finding it challenging in this time to stay as zen on the ground as I can with also meanwhile being aware and prepared. Have you found a balance down there?
No, it's just this miasma every day of just kind of like, well, what has to be done? All right, the dog has to go to the groomer. Okay, what else has to be done? I have to finish writing this thing, and then it's just one. It's almost it's Nate's childhood, except it's every day. It's like 10 different things that have to be done.
Yeah.
And I'm just jumping from one thing to another. And then there's like 30 things left at the end of the day. And then in there is this, I think it's really started in 2020. Like once COVID hit and I'm like, oh, I have to learn how to live a different way. Mm-hmm. And then it was the strikes. And then it was the fires. And then it's fascism. And like there's a new, the world changes at such a rapid pace. Mm-hmm. Or it has been changing at a rapid pace over the last 5 years that I don't feel like I have a handhold or a foothold or any kind of limb hold on anything. Yeah. And so it's all just like what has to be done, what's immediate. And it's like that. And in the back of my head, I'm planning for, okay, like my wife and I both have like what's the red line to leave America? There is going to be, a progressive Jew, a black woman, they're like, there's going to be a point where we hit that point where a congressman is like, we should repeal Loving v. Virginia. Right. And I'm just
exactly.
Okay.
Right. Is this where we're at? Right. And I keep describing it as I keep waiting for chaos to stop instead of understanding that we live in chaos. Like probably like what if for the rest of our lifetimes this is what we're living in, then how do I orient? And I think that's been a helpful question for me to just say like, well, what if you don't wait? Again, the control freak thing. I'm not waiting for it to calm down, and instead it like, how do I be in chaos? And this is where Ram Dass, this is more California, Vermont stuff, but like just really that's where I'm like, there's the only answer here is someone who can give me a hopefully humorous answer to this question that is about living with grace in times of tumult. And I think like the Buddhists. Oh, really? What is up? Are you going to ruin my podcast audio? I'm having deep thoughts right now.
Mabel's doing the same.
They're like, it's been an hour. It's time. Yeah. But yes, Ram Dass on Change, the Buddhists on Change, like people who are actually like dealing with death more, and and I don't know. That's been helping me for what it's worth.
Yeah, but I grew up in such a binary household where I tried to avoid gray areas as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
That chaos, and it's all gray areas, really. Like
Totally.
my therapist said that like a couple years ago. She's like, "Well, you better get used to it because that's all it is." There is,
Right.
when we were talking about like control issues and and feeling neurotic and anxious all the time, and it's because I'm looking for like solidity
Right.
in a world of
Right.
amorphousness.
Right. The
Right.
only constant is change.
Yeah.
So, but you both seem more adaptable? Question mark.
I mean, honestly, working on it, just working on it every day. And the dog does help. You do help, Coco, even though you're being very annoying right now. The dog, and then you have a kid, ha ha ha, and then people laugh at you on the street because they're like, "Oh wow, that guy like laughed at us yesterday, didn't he?"
Wait, what?
This guy was like, "Oh wow, that's like the way humanity is right now. That's beautiful that you're trying to have a family right now." And I was like, "Damn."
That's a stranger?
Yeah. I mean, he was probably on deep drugs, but still, it was pretty profound. But it's every day. I mean, I feel like it's a practice, is what I feel like. To me, again, like I wake up every day with this brain, and then the question is, how do I make peace with it, my brain?
See, I just want an answer. The truth is, you're right. It is a practice, and you have to keep doing it, and you have to keep striving for the thing that you'll never achieve. But can't there just be an answer? Can't someone just tell me the thing to do, and then I do it, and then I'm done, and then it's all solved?
No, but the problem is the answer is death.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
that's the only thing.
Don't wish too hard for that. That's
the
fucking
only
black
thing that's
and white. Yeah, you want black and white.
Yeah.
Okay, wait. We're at the end. There's 2 questions I have left.
Yeah.
Meryl, number 1, when you were like feeling like theater's not the thing, what was it about it that didn't feel right?
It was that music was my passion. So I wrote a puppet opera, and all I wanted to do was write the songs, because I was like, oh, the whole story is in the way that the lyrics of the song and the texture of the music and the harmonies and the melodies work together to create this story. So all of a sudden I was like, I don't need anything else. It's all so in there. I just got super, yeah. And theater is where it really was about the audience too. I was like, there's no one here. Like no, in comparison to the ways that I felt like, I mean, this sounds weird now, but I felt like I didn't hear my voice in the culture at large. And I was like, if I need to hear someone like me singing like this now. Yeah.
No, I totally get that. And then finally, for both of you, was there a point where you made an existential decision? Does that make sense?
You mean to exist?
to do what you wanted to do. Like, was there a point where you like actually actively said, okay, this is it. This is what I'm doing. Or I figured it out.
Yeah. For me, I definitely remember, when I was probably 26 or 25 or so, having breakfast with a friend, and we were just like talking about music and whatever. And I was like, oh, this, like, I can just do this, or we can do this. We don't have to have a plan B. We don't have to go back to school. Like, this is it. We can just like try to make it work. And just, it kind of became like about being comfortable with not having any money potentially, or, you know what I mean? Because I think like when I was younger, I was like, okay, I want to have a family. I want to be able to afford to go on vacation or whatever. And when I was like 25 or 26, I was kind of like, you know what? I don't want any money. I'd rather just do music and not have money. And that was kind of like the decision, I think, where I was like, okay with potentially being like uncomfortable, and making music versus being comfortable and getting like a real job, so to speak.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say for me, it had to do with whether I was going to exist or not. There was a time when I just was so deeply depressed that I didn't understand how to be on the planet anymore. Not that I didn't attempt suicide and I didn't get close to that, but it was, I don't know, people call it suicidal ideation, I guess. And the only thing, and then I wrote the song Hatari, which was on the first Tune Yours record. And I was like, this is it. There is a natural sound that wild things make when they're bound. It rumbles in the ground. I was like, this is everything, the performance theater aspect and music and all these types of music that I love, and my voice singing in this way. That it was like the only thing that made sense to me. And so then I was like, well, that has to be it. That's why I exist.
I get that. Meryl, Nate, I could talk to you for a
Oh my God, this is crazy. This is like deeper than therapy.
I could talk to you for so much longer. Both of our dogs are freaking out.
Yeah, we should go.
Babel, I think she's gonna poop in the floor of the podcast room.
Oh no. It was just so fun talking to you.
This was an absolute delight.
So good to meet you. Thanks so much. That was so fun.
Yeah, thanks again.
Say bye, Coco.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, take care.
We'll see you. Bye.
Bye. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye, oh bye, oh bye, oh bye, oh bye, oh bye.